Natal and postpartum, through you, Madam President.
Thank you. Will you remark on the amendment? Senator Sampson.
Thank you for the recognition, Madam President. I rise in full support of Senator Fazio's well-thought and well-placed amendment. The subject at hand is whether or not the people of the state of Connecticut should continue to finance health care for people that are not even in our state or in our country lawfully. And, you know, I understand that it's very easy to play the sympathy card, and we are all sympathetic to folks that need health care regardless of where they are. But we have an obligation as lawmakers, first and foremost, to uphold the law, including the oath that we made when we were first sworn into office, that we would uphold the laws of the land and the constitutions of our state and federal government. It's a matter of fact that the immigration policy in our country is a national policy. It is the federal government that decides what our border looks like and whether or not unlawful or undocumented individuals should be allowed into our country. The fact of the matter also is that the number of undocumented immigrants in the state of Connecticut has an impact on our economy. You know, just in this last week alone, you know, we had a conversation, a lengthy, multi-hour conversation about housing and a shortage of housing, which I'm hearing my colleagues refer to somewhere in the area of 90,000 units is the number that they tend to throw around. Consider the fact that we don't know the exact number of undocumented immigrants in the state of Connecticut, but it certainly surpasses that. The Department of Motor Vehicles has data on the number of driver's licenses that are issued to undocumented immigrants, and that number is north of 100,000. So just putting all of this data together, it's quite clear that the number of folks that are coming into our state without valid status to be in the country is having an impact on our economy. People back home in my district are struggling to pay their bills. The number one issue of the day, every day, is affordability. And this is just one area in a long 700-plus page document where we could make a difference and actually relieve some of the burden on our Connecticut tax-paying citizens and actually respect the federal immigration policy at the same time. I could go on much more. I'm certainly going to have the chance when I rise in a few minutes to talk about the budget as a whole, but I do want to suggest that Senator Fazio's amendment is correct. We should no longer have a bright neon sign suggesting that Connecticut is the place that you should come to because we are going to support you if you enter the country unlawfully. The fact of the matter is that the majority party with these types of policies is making a promise on behalf of the people that they represent, that the people that they represent don't agree with and cannot afford. And this is a chance to reverse that. I wholeheartedly support the amendment. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Will you remark further, Senator Austin?
Thank you very much, Madam President. And in contemplating some of the things that have been said here today, I would point out that if we spent up to if we cut our revenue, spent up to that revenue, we would be violating one of the things that many of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have said is immoral, or somehow the money is immoral, even though we would be violating the spending cap, and yet taking care of children would not be immoral. And relative to the Department of Motor Vehicle and people who have licenses that may or may not be undocumented, none of those people are eligible for health care relative to this. And in doing the undocumented licenses, I remember as having been here then, I had a number of nuns from the Sisters of Charity, very conservative organization, who came up here. They have one of the largest convents in the state of Connecticut, and they said to me, and they're in Baltic, the town that I live in, and they said, we are really conservative. They actually like Donald Trump in some ways. They said, we want these licenses because people need a way to get around. And I've always wondered about this, if that it's something that kind of always surprises me when we have this conversation, that everybody assumes that people are not working and getting and paying taxes and and doing everything wrong. Most of the people that I meet, actually I haven't met one that didn't, want a job that can support their family. There's something that there's basic dignity in allowing someone to have a job. Now, many of them would like the protections of a job where they were participating in the workforce, following all the same rules that others have that provide protection. But I go back to the people that I talked about earlier today. Those 90 people who had a temporary work permit were here in this country legally, and they were working, all of them working, paying taxes, getting jobs, getting health care, and all of them, all 90 of them, were given a 2-week notice that they had lost their, in quotes, legal immigration status, and they lost their benefits from their job, and now we were trying to figure out what was going to happen. Now, thank goodness, some of them have been able to get an, in quotes, legal immigration status, and we were able to return the temporary work permits till a longer time frame. We've got to figure out immigration, but we cannot be holding children for the responsibilities of not providing them with health care. This works out to be about $2,881 per person. And if they were going to get uncompensated care at our local emergency rooms, one bill would probably be the equivalent of at least $2,000 or $3,000, because I can never go to an emergency room without getting a bill of $2,000 to $3,000, or much more than that, depending on your particular situation. I can't support an amendment like this. I think that it, more than anything else, does not cover the morality of providing our children. I guess I just look at children in the world as needing health care, and I think we should support all of them to get good health care, whether they're here in this country or in any other country. I would ask my colleagues to not support this. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you. Will you remark further on the amendment? If not, the machine has been opened. Mr. Clerk.
An immediate roll call has been ordered in the Senate. An immediate roll call has been ordered in the Senate. We are voting on Senate Amendment B. An immediate roll call has been ordered in the Senate.
The machine is locked. Mr. Clerk.
Total number voting 35. Those voting yea, 10. Those voting nay, 25. Those absent, 1.
Amendment fails. Senator Sampson.
Good afternoon, Madam President, although it's getting close to being good evening time, rather. Just for the record, we are debating House Bill 7287, which is the state budget for the biennium ending in June of 2027. And just because I've received a lot of messages throughout the day asking me about what we're voting on and folks not really understanding our budget process, I just want to make it clear that this is the whole budget, really. In previous years, we've maybe had different ways of doing things. We might have had the fiscal part of the budget, the spreadsheet, if you will, of numbers, and then we would have the implementer, which is the policy that goes with those numbers, as a separate document. But this year, the budget all comes to us in one piece. And I appreciate that, because I've never really liked the idea of voting on the financial part of the budget without knowing the policy implications of the numbers on the page. And I think it's got us into some trouble before. And I'm pleased that we are voting on it in what my view is the correct way today. This document that's before us is around 700 pages. This is my copy of it. You can see I've taken a lot of time to go through and mark it up and try and familiarize myself as much as possible. And I'm glad that I didn't have to speak until later in the day, so I had a little more time to digest what's in here than some other folks have. But this is a lot to digest, frankly, in a relatively short period of time. The House voted on the budget yesterday, and that's really the first time you can take a hard look at it. I don't know when it was actually presented to them, but until it's actually baked and you're actually voting on it, you don't know if it's going to change or what's going to happen with it. So this is the actual document. There has been an amendment that is also part of this. This is just another 65-page document. And the basic framework of this budget is 693 pages, as I said, 469 sections. And I would say that at 693 plus an amendment pages, I wouldn't call that bloated. I'd say it's probably hiding some things that are very important. And I also don't think if we were doing an honest budget that we would need 400 sections. And that will go to a point I will make in a few minutes about the items that are in this budget document that really are not part of the budget itself. I am told that the total appropriations for this budget are $27.1 billion in fiscal year 26 and $28.6 billion in fiscal year 27, which is just under $56 billion for the biennium. And just to put that in perspective, I was first elected in 2010, and I served my first year of service in the House of Representatives in 2011. And the very first budget that I got to vote on, I believe, was around $17.5 billion in the first year, and maybe closer to $18 billion in the second year. So what does that add up to? That's what, $35 billion. Those numbers also included the full amount of Medicaid funding, not just the state part of the Medicaid funding, but also the federal part. We've since changed the way we count that money. So in fact, the numbers that we're looking at here, if we were using the same criteria and the same math that we were using back in 2011, this number, I think, would be much closer to another $8 or $9 billion more. Figure $65 billion. So this state budget has practically, if not assuredly, doubled just since I've been in office, just since the Malloy and Lamont years. The increases over the previous years are $1.16 billion in the first year, which is 4.6%, and $1.45 billion in the second year, which is 5.3%. And my good friend and colleague, Senator Fazio, who I want to say did a tremendous job in his remarks on this document. Senator Fazio serves as the ranking member on the Finance Committee, and I'll tell you, there is no one better suited for the job. His intellect and his ability to seek out and understand what is happening with our state's finances are second to none. He mentioned in his comments the forgotten man as part of his conversation, and I will get back to that in a minute. But one thing he mentioned that I thought was really interesting was his a few minutes that he spent discussing the power of compounding. And just to illustrate that, he was referring to the savings that are possible if we decide to have more growth based on our policies or limit the amount of taxation on people of Connecticut. In my case, I'm going to just talk about these two numbers, 4.6% in 24 and 5.3% in 26. That actually adds up to almost 14% in compounded increase in spending over that period of time. That's remarkable. A 13-14% increase in state pending in 1 year. Consider that I don't know any families in Connecticut that are getting a raise even remotely close to that. And I would just ask rhetorically, why should government get such a raise? In previous years, and I've debated a number of budgets over my time of service here, in previous years we often refer to the budget as a vision, or some people say it's a blueprint, or it's a plan for the future, and all of those things are true. But what is worth noting is that this particular budget is maybe one of the most one-sided budgets I've seen in a long time. In the last several cycles, I think there was an attempt made to try and get more of a bipartisan level of support on budgets, but this one doesn't seem like that was ever attempted. This is a very much majority Democrat agenda product, top to bottom, and I don't know that there was any support in the House, and I tend to doubt that there will be any Republican support in the Senate. And that's really because this budget bill, the one big budget bill, I believe is symbolic of the differences between the two political parties. And it is indeed a blueprint for what the Democrats' agenda for Connecticut is, which is to continue to expand and grow government. I look at this budget as a mechanism to create as many dependents on the state as possible. And that's the exact opposite of what I believe in. I'm a Republican because I believe in small government. I believe in making the government as responsible and accountable to the people as possible. And I believe we should definitely have government, but that government should only be what we truly need to have. We shouldn't have a government that plays a role in every aspect of the daily lives of our citizens. And that's exactly what this budget does, is it grows government in a way to interfere with almost every aspect of our lives. And not just in the amount that people are going to be taxed or how much they're going to have to pay to merely survive in the state of Connecticut, but in countless other aspects as well, which we're going to get into. That's what all of this giant ream of paper is about, the ways government is going to become a part of the lives of the people of Connecticut, even if it hasn't already. One main issue I take with this budget, and I've been trying to get myself worked up all afternoon, frankly, because when I first heard that this budget was going to contain section upon section upon section upon section of other bills that were supposed to go through the proper legislative process, bills that were in a different form as an individual policy with a bill number that's already had a hearing and gone through committee and are up for a vote in one or the other chamber. Some of them having already gone through one chamber but not the other. When I heard these items were going to be all tucked very neatly into this document, I was upset. And just sitting here and listening to the budget debate, I got to tell you, it's not the most exciting topic. We're talking about numbers on a page and some pretty dry policy, so it's hard to get animated about it. But if I start thinking about this process and how we got here, I start to get frustrated, and rightly so, because each party has an obligation to their constituents to try and move their agenda as best they can. The minority party, of which I'm a part, we have a much tougher time, obviously. We have very limited ability to get things done because the majority has the votes. The majority party, they has the power to decide which policies ever get a hearing at the committee level. They decide which things are ever going to be brought up for a vote at the committee level. They decide which bills are actually brought to the floor for a vote in the House or Senate. It relies on the minority's ability to push back and force the majority to negotiate for us to accomplish anything, to decide what bills are going to happen that the majority is not in favor of. And, when you work so hard, as I do and a lot of my other colleagues in the minority do, to try and stop what we consider to be bad policy, when we come to the circle and we get up and we speak for many hours on certain topics. We try and offer amendments to illustrate problems with bills and to try and make them better. When we invest a lot of effort, even outside the building, to try and get people engaged, to contact lawmakers, to change the outcome of things. And we work so hard to make all of that happen, and we get down to the last couple of days of the session, and we've been successful. We stopped a great many policies from occurring that the minority doesn't want to see happen. And to see all of those things, not all of them, but many of those things stuck in the budget bill in a place where they don't belong is unbelievably frustrating. That's not policy making. That's policy laundering. They're basically bad bills that are washed clean through the budget to avoid the additional public scrutiny of a debate on the floor. And in my view, if a policy cannot survive on its own, it shouldn't be buried in this must-pass, giant 700-page document like a legislative booby trap. That is not the process that we have. The process should be respected. And to be putting other items in the budget at this late hour simply because there's no time left. The fact that there's no time left is a reflection of only two things. Either poor time management on behalf of the majority, a lack of desire to move those bills through the process by the majority, or the effort and skill of the minority in preventing them from happening. The budget is not supposed to be a trash can to throw policies that were not worthy enough to make it through the legislative process in to get them over the finish line at the very last instant. That's not what the budget is supposed to be. And even if this is one of the best budget documents that I'd ever seen, it's not. But even if it was, I couldn't support it simply because of the addition of those items. At some point, we have to respect process. I look at me and my team in the minority, and I say, we followed the rules. We debated the bills, we voted, and now the majority is rewriting history with a budget that overrides that process entirely. It makes me wonder why we don't just put all the bills for the whole session in one giant document and just vote on it one time, one shot deal. This is almost as bad. 469 sections. By my count, I would say the number of sections that legitimately could be described as part of the budget itself is probably under 100. Most of this budget, most of this document, most of this pile of paper is for things well beyond what really constitutes the budget of the state of Connecticut. They are just other ancillary policies that should have gone through the entire process the right way or not. I want to also remark that Senator Summers, who is our appropriations ranking member, I thought she did a remarkable job of breaking down the budget part of the document in particular so that people who are watching understand where the money goes. And I will offer certainly my respect and appreciation for the Democratic chairs of the Appropriations Committee and the Finance Committee for their hard work. Because I know the job that they do is very, very difficult, and trying to make as many people happy with a document like this is just impossible on its face. There are going to be people that are dissatisfied no matter what. I would have preferred that maybe even more people were dissatisfied, because at the end of the day, the people that are going to be most dissatisfied with this budget document are the taxpayers of the state who are footing the bill for it. But I do respect all the parties and the effort that they put into producing a budget. And I also want to state very clearly for the record that I'm not against spending money. In fact, there are many things in this budget that I'm very appreciative. I know that we increase spending in a number of areas for people that are truly in need in our state, and I'm in favor of that. I'm in favor of spending money in cases where people are actually, truly in need of help. The problem I have is that there are countless other dollars that are being spent that have very little to do with people that are truly in need. And the frustration is that the people that are truly in need, whether it is a program for the deaf or whether it is the Arc of Southington, which is in my district, which is having such a great difficulty trying to keep their employees and be able to manage their clients and be able to provide the services they do. You know, those situations are a result of the fact that we are spending so much money on other things that I don't think are actually as worthy. And if we had been spending the money that is set aside for people in need on people only in need, guess what? There'd be enough money for them. We just had a short debate about providing health care for undocumented immigrants. And, you know, the argument always turns on, well, aren't you sympathetic? These are sometimes women or young children. Like, of course I am. But at the same time, there are limits to what our obligation is. We're supposed to be representing the people of the state of Connecticut. We're not supposed to be representing people that are not in the country lawfully. We have a rule of law. We have a system in place that guides us on what to do. We're even restricted by federal law from doing the things that we're doing, and yet they get done anyway in a budget document like this. The question really is, whenever you look at a budget document, is will this benefit the people of Connecticut? And I think the answer very clearly is if you are a recipient at some point on some page of this document, sure. In the short term, you might benefit. But if you're someone who's not a regular receiver of state benefits, but rather regular payer of taxes, I don't think you're going to benefit at all, because I think you will be even more behind the eight ball. You will be paying even more taxes. And I think the slow exodus that we have been witnessing in Connecticut for a long time of hardworking, producing people that pay taxes is only going to continue, because nothing in this budget gives anyone a reason to change their plans from moving to South Carolina and staying in Connecticut. Anyone who's considering it has no reason to revisit that decision. They're going to, in fact, look at this as a symbol that they're making the right decision. And that is just disappointing and sad from my perspective. I love this state. I grew up here. I intend on living all of my years in Connecticut. Every other year when we have an election, I have to make a decision. Am I going to stay and fight to fix our state, or am I going to bail? Am I going to get out of here? And I decide the same thing every time, which is that I'm going to stay here and keep fighting to improve the state of Connecticut, to make it a place worth living, where people want to be, where people can actually more than survive. That's the word that I keep hearing from my neighbors these days. It's getting harder to survive. Can you imagine people in our day and age that's how they look at their life in the state of Connecticut? In the United States of America? I can't even believe that. We should be thriving. We have so many advantages. We have maybe the smartest people in the whole world in our state, let alone in the country. We are situated in a place that makes complete sense for opportunity's sake. But in my view, the people in charge of our state over the last 15 years or so have withered away all the value in what Connecticut has to offer by expanding the nanny state, redistributing wealth, punishing people that work hard, punishing people that produce, making it more difficult for people to operate and run a business. So now they're looking at surviving instead of thriving. So the answer to that question is no. I don't think the people of Connecticut are better off. And I do think that the people that might be better off in the short term because of the benefits that they'll get as a result of this extreme expansion in state spending is temporary. The amount of spending that happens relies on the amount of taxation that the state can legitimately achieve. But as you chase away the producing people in our state, you chase away the ability to tax. And I think we're going to have a tougher and tougher time in the future. The answer, as Senator Fazio so aptly pointed out, and I would also add, I think, what's happening on the federal level, the answer is growth, economic growth. The answer is creating an environment where people want to be here, to start new businesses, to take risk, to make themselves more successful, where they truly do thrive. That's the answer. I'm going to dig into the document itself in a minute, but I just want to see if there's anything I should add before we get into that. I'll just say a word about priorities, I guess, first off. Something I say all the time in my town hall meetings when people ask me what's going on, and I'm going to get that question in response to this budget document, is what's going on up there? Senator, I mean, why are things the way they are? And they're frustrated about everything. They're frustrated about their electric bill. I have a lot of neighbors, a lot of friends, some family members very upset about their property taxes most recently. And these things are all interconnected. And I keep telling them the same thing, which is that as long as the Democrats are in a majority in the state of Connecticut, they will continue to expand the state government. They will continue to expand and increase the wages of the state workforce, which I don't have a problem with, except for the fact that that priority has to be weighed against the other needs of the state. The second priority of the majority is always special interests, the various nonprofit organizations and the various entities that receive benefits from the state in the form of entitlements and other state spending. It is only after state employees and special interests are taken care of do the majority ever take a look at the impact on municipal aid. And I've become a huge supporter of municipal aid since I've gotten here over the years. For me, I started by saying I'm a small government conservative. I want us to shrink government as much as possible, and that's true. But the one area where we're failing to actually grow government is in the realm of municipal aid. Our towns across the state are suffering because they are being forced day after day to live with ever-rising budget circumstances, a lot of it created by the state government in the form of mandates. Built-in raises, long-term obligations, all the things Senator Fazio said far better than I ever could. Those things are driving up the cost for towns. And these town governments are struggling because they don't have the same ability to change what and how they're taxing the people that we do, frankly. They're stuck with the property tax as really their only legitimate avenue to tax. And please do not misinterpret what I'm saying to suggest that we should give them any more avenues. I do not want that. And I do not want towns taxing people anymore either. But what I do want to do is I want to give town governments the tools they need and the support they need from the state government so that they are not in that position. But the way things are, the best we can get out of a state budget in Connecticut with the current majority in place is really to level fund the municipalities. I don't know, there might be a few $1 million sprinkled in here and there for various programs, but generally speaking, they feel like it's fine and dandy to just go ahead and level fund them, despite the fact that their costs rise year after year after year based on built-in raises and inflation and everything else. And that's just not good enough. Because when they're faced with a Board of Ed budget that they're being asked to deal with a 7 or 8 or 9 or 10% increase, and they're trying to push back on the Board of Ed to say, we can't do that. and their general government budget is going up several percent too. How did they manage that when they don't have a mechanism to do anything to recover that money except for raising property taxes, because the state is not fulfilling its part of the deal by helping to provide their portion? As I said, I probably spent a lot of time explaining that I didn't need to. It's a very simple decision-making process. It's about priorities. And municipal aid is at the very bottom of the list of priorities, I'm afraid. I want to just say a word about affordability, and then we'll get into the actual document. I started talking about this briefly during the amendment that we had, but I want to just remind everyone that affordability is the most important issue to the people we represent. So if there are people in the room listening, I appreciate that. If there's anyone at home listening, you already know what I'm talking about. It is getting harder and harder to pay our bills in this state. I know this from my own personal experience. It seems like every bill that I get, whether it's from the cable company or it's from the electric company or you name it, everything costs more than it did. The one exception, I think, is gasoline. I think gasoline has managed to creep down in the last several months, and I think that's a good thing. But I don't think that's something that is dictated by the state government. What is dictated by the state government, however, is a lot of the policies that are in this state budget that are affecting the cost of goods and services as we see them. Almost every day, we are faced with yet another policy in the area of labor or business regulation that is putting businesses in our state in a situation where they're less able to provide the quality and number of jobs that they once did. They are not able to offer their products at the same prices they once did. Some of this is generated by inflation on a federal level, but there is no doubt that the actions of the state government contribute to the cost of goods and services. And affordability is the name of the game. That's our responsibility. The people that have elected us are sending us up here, and the number one message that I get when I'm reading my emails or talking to my constituents is, do something, Rob, do something to make our state more affordable. So I started this year, and the year before, and the year before that, and the year before that, offering policies designed to shrink government, to reduce costs, to reduce burdensome regulation, to try and attack the source of the problem. Electric rates, for example. To date, this body hasn't done anything significant about addressing electric rates. And don't anybody stand up and correct me and say, we passed Senate Bill 4 a couple days ago. Not enough. Not enough. My understanding is that the public benefits charge that's on electric bills is supposed to be something like 27% of the rest of the bill. And the policy that was just passed in this legislature a few days ago doesn't even begin to touch that amount, let alone the cost of the delivery and supply of electricity in a way that's going to make any significant change for the people of Connecticut. I appreciate that some effort was put into addressing the problem, but nothing that actually rises to the level of solving it or even ameliorating it to a degree that's going to satisfy the people back home. They want us to actually fix the problem. They don't want lip service. They don't want half measures. They want a solution. And so do I. We in the minority have offered numerous pieces of legislation to do exactly that. And to date, none of them have made it up for a vote in either chamber. I started going through this bill like page by page, I guess. It starts with a bill analysis, which is helpful because you can kind of highlight at least areas where you want to start discussing different things. And then after that, forgive me while I'm changing the pages here to get to where I need to be. There's a section by section summary. And as I indicated earlier, it shows budget provisions, sections 1 through 45 out of 469. I think the first section that I'm going to ask the good chairman of the Appropriations Committee about is section 187. Through you, Madam President, can I just ask the good chairman what section 187 does?
Senator Austin.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Can you tell me what page that is, sir?
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I am on page 72 of the summary, but I also can find it in the bill. I believe it's on page 240 of the bill.
Senator Austin.
Thank you. Give me 1 minute. Madam President, if you would mind, through you, which section is my good colleague on?
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'm just asking about section 187 of the budget document before us.
Thank you, Senator Austin.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And this section covers what, sir? Through you.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I would just say, I asked you first, Senator Doff. This section is entitled the Safe Harbor Account. And I'm asking because I think I recognize this from another Senate bill that was debated in this chamber maybe within the last week.
Thank you, Senator Austin.
Thank you very much, Madam President. My documents do not apparently line up with the good senator, so if he could continue asking his question, I'll see if I can answer it.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I don't mean to be difficult, but I have already identified the page in the summary. It's page 72 of the summary. It's section 187, Safe Harbor Account, and section 187 in the bill itself is on page 240.
Thank you, Senator Austin.
I am at the right page now. Thank you. I apologize. I didn't perceive you as difficult. I clearly was going to the wrong section. Through you.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'm just asking what overall these few sections, well, I think it's only one section. Am I correct about that? Let me take a look. Does it carry on? Yeah, it's just one section of the bill, section 187. And this part of the document looks familiar because I believe this is part of Senate Bill 7, which is a bill that passed out of this chamber, I think on a party line vote, and then went to the House. And I believe they may have made an amendment down there. And I think many of us were expecting to see that bill back up in this chamber for another go-around. And rather than having that happen, it looks like the decision was made to include it in this budget document. And I was going to ask the good chairman what this bill is about, really because I wanted to illustrate that it has nothing to do with the actual budget itself. And I'm curious why it's here and it did not go through the proper legislative process. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you very much. And this section is about gender-affirming healthcare services, and it is a part of former Senate Bill 7. There was a change, a disagreeing action taken in the House downstairs, and several sections of my understanding is several sections of Senate Bill 7 are in this implementer. I don't think all of the sections are in this implementer, but several sections. And it is not connected with the budget document in its entirety. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I appreciate that very direct and honest answer from the good chairman. Something that I commend her for is that I know that she's always more than willing to tell us the complete truth, unadulterated, and I appreciate that sincerely. And I'm glad we're talking about this because this is an illustration of several things. First and foremost, this is a section of this budget bill, the one big budget, one big bad budget, I think is what I called it, the one big bad budget. This particular document includes this section that's from another unrelated bill that's already passed this chamber, has already passed the House chamber, but only after a modification, and was poised to come back here for another vote in the Senate. But rather than doing that, the majority felt it was more appropriate to tuck it into this budget document. And I bring it up for a couple of reasons. One, I think it's interesting because there's nothing budget related in this at all. In fact, this particular item goes out of its way to say that under the bill, account-related administrative costs for maintenance or disbursements must be paid from the account itself and not from taxpayer funds. It's a bill essentially that would give the treasurer the ability to set up an account to raise money to provide for gender-affirming care services. And yes, that does include reproductive health care, gender-affirming care, puberty blockers, gender surgery, all of those things. And that's right here in our state budget, even though it's completely unrelated to the actual budget for the state of Connecticut. And for me, it's a frustration because I know what happened. The minority party, including myself, when that bill, Senate Bill 7, was in this chamber and we were debating it, we made a really big deal about a section in that bill that had to do with providing a state-funded opportunity or safe zone for people to go and take illegal, illicit drugs lawfully under the protection of the state of Connecticut. I characterize that as a drug den. And maybe that's inappropriate because it's not exactly the neighborhood crack house in a terrible, depressed area. But I also don't think it's the right policy for the state of Connecticut to engage in, to be setting up places for people to take illegal drugs. And it has no place in this budget document, in my view. I want to ask another question through you, Madam President. Is there anything in this budget proposal about medical debt through you?
Senator Austin.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Nice to see you up there. Relative to medical debt, I would have to peruse this on a find all through the regular way to edit or find sections of the budget. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I mean no disrespect to the chairman, but she is clearly the most knowledgeable person in this entire building about the state budget. She's the chair of the Appropriations Committee. She's been charged with bringing out this bill for us today and responding to the questions from any of the other members about what is in this budget document. So forgive me if I'm not pleased to get no answer when I ask a relatively basic question about what is in the actual document. I'm reading something in the summary that says that Public Act 23204, which was amended by Public Act 2481, allocated $6.5 million in federal ARPA funds. These are monies that were given to the state of Connecticut allegedly to provide relief from the pandemic, but that money was used to enter the state of Connecticut in a partnership with an organization, a non-government organization called Undo Medical Debt, which is a national nonprofit. And I guess their job is to negotiate with hospitals or other folks that are owed for medical debt in an effort to reduce the amount. And they are actually going to spend this money to eliminate medical debt. I'm just curious what continues in this state budget, and the fact that it's mentioned in this summary must mean that there is something going on in this budget regarding that medical debt erasure initiative. And I'm curious what it is. Through you.
Senator Austin.
Thank you very much, Madam President. So I did a little bit of digging into the budget, and much of the implementer has a lot of different things that are not necessarily associated with the budget, although we did talk about medical debt before, and is in section 196 on page 248, and it's in the Office of the Healthcare Advocate shall contract with a vendor to develop an online hospital financial assistance portal. A financial assistance portal is used in other states to help people deal with medical debt, one of the worst types of debts that we could have, because often medical debt happens as a result of someone who has inadequate health care. It ends up with debt that sometimes impacts folks that sometimes the person who is using the medical assistance has passed away and left a family member with a large debt, or sometimes the person is unable to get to work anytime soon. And so this medical debt that we have here and this policy is a way to deal with the medical debt. And under no circumstances am I attempting to not answer the good colleagues' questions, and I appreciate that he considers me all-knowing. I would let you know that I am not all-knowing, and a lot of times have to go back and research an issue to make sure that I am giving the correct information. He did say that he likes that I'm pretty blunt. I'm saying I'm not always liked because I'm blunt, but I do believe that that's what he's referring to. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I appreciate that. And I certainly meant no disrespect to my colleague. I meant to only acknowledge that she is the most knowledgeable person about the state budget. And that's the reason why she's here in our chamber answering these questions. The fact that the answer is not readily available sometimes is not really a reflection on my good colleague. It's a reflection on this ginormous, huge document. And in my view, it's not reasonable to expect people to digest or have to vote on bills that are 700 or more pages long within a matter of hours, that include lots of unconnected, unrelated, and frankly, in this particular case, once again, something outside the realm of the state budget as part of the document. That's the reason why I brought this up. I do want to ask a question about it, though. What happens, through you, Madam President, when medical debt is erased? I just want to be a little more specific, because that's not the best question to ask. But when we contract with a company like Undo Medical Debt, which is a nonprofit company, and they are attempting to collect medical debt, and apparently they use the dollars that we've provided them effectively to pay off the debtor. But I assume that they're paying off the debtor with some reduced amount that is settled for. My question really is, what happens to the balance of the debt that was not paid by Undo Medical Debt in a circumstance like that? Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Austin.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam President. Just to clarify the question, is the question relative to whether or not the person has a consequence or the business has a consequence through you, Madam President?
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. The question is really who has a consequence? What happens? I'll give you an example. Suppose someone owes $25,000 in medical debt, and what happens is it goes to collection, and the undue medical debt national nonprofit organization contracted with the state of Connecticut goes in and they negotiate that the debt can be settled for $5,000. Presumably the person who had the medical debt is now free and clear because their debt has been cleared. But what happens as a result of that? Through you.
Thank
Senator
you.
Austin.
I apologize, Madam President, and through you. There are two consequences as a result of that. The debt that is paid to the hospital in this case, or medical professional, is paid less than what was anticipated when originally billed. So the business or the entity that's receiving the payment is receiving less than they may have anticipated. The person who owes the debt does not walk away free and clear. There are a lot of tax complications relative to this, so it's not just like the person has a free and clear record after this medical debt is expunged, for lack of a different term. And so I think that there's consequences all around, but I think that when you have a medical debt, it's not something that you had as a result, generally, let me just say generally, it's not as a result of a cosmetic surgery, because generally those are fully paid for, but it's as a result of someone going for usage of health care that is either for an experience that is or possibly life-changing or life-ending. So I think that there are a lot of complications relative to this and not necessarily easy to explain. But I see there are terms on both sides that change the world.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President, and I appreciate that answer and the direct nature of it as well. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I just wanted to ask how this process was progressing, and we do know. The fact is that to date, it looks like, according to this document, that so far about $100,000 worth of the ARPA funds have been expended to satisfy around 575,000 worth of ARPA funds have been invested and have addressed around $100 million in qualifying medical debt, which is a pretty substantial ratio, which also paints a picture of just how much money was actually taken out of the money that would have went to the providers in those cases. And the reason why I brought this up is because, to me, this is symptomatic of, one of the reasons driving the costs in the healthcare arena is that we're finding ways to avoid the full amount being accounted for in some cases, which naturally is going to be passed on to other consumers. Also, I would just stress that this money, the ARPA pandemic relief funds, I don't believe were properly used for this purpose. I don't think that's what was intended by the federal government when they created the American Rescue Plan Act, and I don't see how the state of Connecticut continues to engage in this, both taking money that was supposed to go for pandemic relief from people that might have deserved pandemic relief, and also helping some folks avoid medical debt that they are obligated for, which I'm certainly sympathetic to, and I don't object to, but it's happening at the expense of other consumers, and in this case, taxpayers as well. So that's just a frustration. Moving on to sections 206 to 211, This has to do with lactation consultant licensure. Just through you, Madam President, what does this have to do with the budget?
Senator Austin.
Thank you very much. Madam President, this bill is not budget related.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. So it's no longer a bill. It was a bill that was going to be hotly contested in the House. I have some colleagues who told me they were going to go for multiple hours debating this bill in the House because of their tremendous frustration over the fact that they know people that are in this industry that have been involved for decades. And they are frustrated because they don't see a need or reason to have any licensing created by the state of Connecticut for their industry, and yet there is a bill that proposes to do just that. But unfortunately, it appears that rather than allowing that debate to go forward naturally on the single subject of lactation consultant licensure in both chambers, there was a decision made to go around our understanding and put this right into the budget. You know, generally speaking, when we're discussing bills on the floor and people are talking about amendments and so forth, we have this concept that is referred to all the time about whether things are germane. I remember one time I was in the House of Representatives, so no reflection on this chamber, but I tried to offer an amendment on a bill having to do with firearm laws. And I put an amendment having to do with firearm laws on the bill. And when I attempted to call it, I was ruled out of order by the Speaker for offering an amendment that was not germane. And yet, it seems that the majority has the ability to take a bill that has nothing to do with the budget whatsoever, as we just heard, that is already going through the proper legislative process, and just tuck it neatly into a budget document, despite its lack of coherence to be here. It also clearly avoids the lengthy debate, because even if there were separate debates on each of the items that I'm going to address going forward, there's a number of these bills I might have got up on the floor individually and spoke for multiple hours on. I don't know what the total would have been for all of those things, but it's not humanly possible for me or anyone else to get up here and speak for the 75 hours that might have generated the conversation on these bills if they went through individually. And I just see this practice of putting things in the implementer as a last-ditch end around to what is normally a respectful process where there's an understanding that the majority has the votes. They get to win the debate. They get to pass the laws that they choose to because of it. But the minority has the power to speak, to offer alternatives, to challenge those things, to slow down the process when necessary. That all goes out the window when you have a 700-page budget document that includes a bunch of things that were done for the express purpose of avoiding the minority's ability to stop them. Moving on to sections 242 and 243. Through you, Madam President, these sections are referred to as Study and Working Group on Transportation Network Companies and Third-Party Delivery Companies. Can the good chairman let me know what this has to do with the state budget?
Senator Austin.
Thank you very much, Madam President. This has nothing to do with the budget, through you.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Just out of curiosity, I wonder if the good chairman can tell me what this section, or two sections, is about, through you.
Senator Austin.
Thank you. I believe that this section of the budget, not a bill itself, but the section of the budget relates to a bill that was in the Labor Committee, and it would, well, I suppose I could say, because Section B of Section 242B has an appropriation of $100,000 for conducting a study on third-party delivery company drivers in order to analyze their pay, their benefits, and the consequence of this transportation network and the relationship to the company that they are dealing with. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I appreciate the answer, and the good chairman has me there that there definitely is an appropriation which does make its way into having some connection with the state budget, but under normal circumstances, this particular proposal would have gone through the proper process as just a labor bill. There would have been an accounting for that $100,000 somewhere in this document, but the policy that's here, which is of a significant interest, it's apparently a study, but what are we studying? We're supposed to be studying in this language. The bill establishes a working group to study and make recommendations on the working conditions and compensation of TNC and third-party delivery company drivers. Now, I'm the ranking member on the Labor Committee. I don't expect the good chairman of the Appropriations Committee to have any direct knowledge of this bill, but I'm going to ask anyway, since she's the person I've been given to ask questions to. Can I ask through you, Madam President, why is it we want to study the working conditions and compensation of third-party delivery company drivers and transportation network companies? Through you.
Senator Austin.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Not being intimately involved in these discussions, I can only posit that this is to come forward with more appropriate legislation in the next General Assembly session. Through you, Madam President.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. If you've been following the Labor Committee in the legislature or any of the news surrounding TNCs or transportation network companies, you would know that we have, over the last, I'd say at least 3, but maybe 4 or 5 years, debated at great length with many, many people coming out to our committee to offer public hearing testimony, etc. A lot of discussion about the potential of unionizing transportation network company drivers and or applying many different requirements on the companies that employ them. And this appears very clear to me that this is on its face an effort to create the information necessary to come back with a policy to do exactly that. This is, I bring it up simply to point out that this is a labor bill. This is a bill that should have come before the House and Senate on its own to be debated on its merits. And this is a bill that would have gone for a significant amount of time for debate. Simply on my end, I find it objectionable, and I would have made every effort to prevent it from happening, but it is lumped again inside this larger document. Moving on to sections 245 and sections 246. This is about municipal lien assignment. I'll ask the same question I've been asking, which is, what does this have to do with our state budget? Through you.
Senator Austin.
Thank you very much, Madam President. If the Senate could stand at ease while I get to the right section.
The Senate will stand at ease.
Madam President, is that section 245?
Senator Sampson.
It is sections 245 and 246 entitled Municipal Lien Assignment.
Senator Austin.
Thank you very much, Madam President. This is a section that has to do with unpaid taxes on real property. And I believe that my good colleague from Finance, Revenue, and Bonding would have more to say on taxes than I. And I don't know if this is a bill that he had in the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee. Through you. Madam President, and I would yield to my colleague from Finance, Revenue, and Bonding.
Thank you. Senator from Farah.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening. If the gentleman could repeat the question.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I appreciate that. The reason why I brought up this section is because, first and foremost, I don't think it belongs in the state budget. But second of all, I have a concern about the policy. And I was worried that because this did not come before our chamber in a format by itself as a single issue or at least related issue document, that it was not going to be properly debated. So I just wanted to maybe ask a couple of questions about this proposal so that at least there's something on the record in this legislative cycle that relates to this policy itself before it gets passed as part of this larger document. So I just want to make sure that the good chairman's prepared to answer any questions I have about this section through you.
Senator from Farah.
As prepared as I'm ever going to be, Madam President.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I guess the one concern I have is because what this is doing is it's creating a mandate on municipalities, on towns, for people that are delinquent in their property taxes. They can currently charge up to 18% in interest. And I certainly don't want to see people overcharged as far as their interest goes, but I also have a concern that if this bill goes forward, as it apparently is going to as part of the state budget, and it is reduced to only 12%, does that increase the likelihood that less people may bother to pay their delinquent property taxes through you?
Senator from Farah.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam President. I have not seen this particular provision. Certainly it's not before us in the Finance Committee, but it's certainly an issue that's been debated for years as to whether 18% is a fair interest to be charged that would balance the ability to have taxpayers pay on time without making it usury. And certainly the question about whether 12% it would be better, obviously, because we do hear a number of taxpayers who do fall behind and end up having to have sometime the interest be greater than what the actual bill was. But that's the best response I can give at this time.
Thank you. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'm very, very sorry to disturb the chairman of the Finance Committee over a bill that was not in his committee, but I do appreciate the insight. I think this is something that really would have resulted in a significant debate as a standalone bill in our chamber. I just really do. But because it's here in the budget, we're not even the right people talking about it. I'm not the ranking member on the committee relative to this policy. That's not the proper chairman that's relative to this policy. It's not being given the due justice that it deserves. Here it is, once again, the majority just sliding this, what is a very, very controversial policy. As was just noted, this is something that has come before the legislature, I don't know how many times in the past, and yet it's going to happen this time. And it's going to happen in large part because it's just been tucked in the budget and not properly debated. I don't know if this is going to result in a shortfall to the towns that I represent in their tax collection process. I don't know if that means that because they don't collect enough delinquent taxes in the form of the interest that is currently statute, once that number is lowered, are they going to have to raise the property taxes on the rest of the taxpayers in the town to make up for that? I don't know the answers to these questions. These are things that should have been debated and should have been discussed as part of a proper debate on this particular policy. That will not happen, and that will not happen as a direct result of the choice that was made by the majority to include this as part of the state budget document. There are other sections in this bill that I think deserve a lot of scrutiny. There is sections 270 through 277, real estate wholesalers. This is a very complex series of policies that was hotly debated in the House of Representatives. And I was looking forward to having a sincere conversation about this provision as a standalone bill, as it once was when it came to this chamber. And yet, I don't know who I should be talking to. I don't know who I should be asking. We certainly cannot invest the proper amount of time and energy into discussing it. I think that these requirements that are being placed on these individuals have nothing to do with the state budget. I don't see any impact on the state budget except the potential that maybe there is a penalty that could be placed on someone that does not follow these new requirements that I suppose could result in some sort of offset, but it would be minimal impact. The issue is not the finances here. It's about new, far-reaching policy that is going to impose regulations on an entire industry. And I'm fearful that many people that are actually participating in this industry aren't even going to know about it until after it happens. Partly because it's not getting the proper exposure that it should, and partly because, in my view, it's an inane policy. The fact of the matter is that people that engage in real estate wholesale often are benefiting the parties through their actions. I know from my own personal experience, folks that have partnered with someone who took their own money to invest in improving someone's distressed property, kind of as a partnership, so that at the end of the day, once the property is improved, it gets sold at a much higher value, and they split the profit together. This is a benefit for both the parties, and yet, effectively, it's going to be potentially, I won't say outlawed, but it's going to be made so much more difficult by these provisions that are right here, not getting a proper debate, that I think it will curtail that activity in our state. And that's unfortunate. I noticed Section 279 incorporates, parts of Senate Bill 2, another major policy proposal that was debated in the Senate. I don't know if it ever went through the House. I don't know if it got changed. I don't really know what the outcome was. I just know that this is a provision that's got nothing to do with the budget, and yes, it's in here. There is another section, Section 301 through 311, regarding reproductive and gender-affirming healthcare services. Here is another situation where we are effectively creating a shield law that would shield healthcare providers in the state from liability if they provide certain types of healthcare services from liability when imposed by another state. This is something that is highly controversial, would result in hours of debate all by itself. And yet, the only mention really is probably going to come from me today for a few minutes discussing that I'm opposed to this policy, and I am very, very distressed that it is being included in this catch-all, go around the minority budget document. Then there are sections 313 through, I think, 316, maybe even beyond that have to do with elections. I serve as the ranking member on the Government Administration and Elections Committee, and for the last several years, we've had some very hotly contested debates over election integrity and security. And I have got the opportunity yet this year to even have that debate. The majority chairman refused to hear the proposals coming from minority Republicans on the subject of election integrity as part of the committee process, leaving me only the option of amendments. And so far, we haven't done an election-related bill in the Senate this year, and therefore I haven't offered those amendments. And instead of having a standalone election-related bill, the election-related policies apparently are being tucked neatly into our 700-page budget document rather than having a proper hearing and so forth. I'm tempted to run those election-related amendments now, but I don't really see a point in it at this point. I'm trying to make a larger point that there is a process which should be followed. And that process really is about using the legislative rules that we have in a proper manner to make sure that these policies are properly debated by the respective chairman and ranking members of those committees, that they are given proper forum for discussion by all of the members, that they are broken down into their individual parts so that people have an opportunity to have their say on them, and rather than sticking them in one giant bill. I notice on section 325, this is something that may in fact be related to the state budget, but I do want to ask about it while we're here. Through you, Madam President, can I just ask the good chairman what is happening with retired teachers' health insurance through you?
Thank you, Senator Austin.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And retired teachers' health insurance is in the budget. And what we did was return to a policy for year one to have a portion of the cost of retiree health care be paid for by the state, and a portion be paid for by the balance that's in the account. The account for teachers' health care is robust right now, and in year two go back to the policy of the state paying a third, the teachers paying a third, and this right now has not an additional cost for the individual teachers, but taking more from the balance relative to that, and it does fit within the confines of the budget. I'm not on the right page right now because I had slipped ahead to somebody else's questions, but I can go back and read it directly through you. But this is part of the budget through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate that response. I just wanted to clarify that while the good chairman mentioned that the amount of the state's share is being reduced from a third to a quarter, that the reason this is happening is because the account is, I think she used the word robust, and that this doesn't have any reflection on diminishing the value of this teacher's retired health insurance fund, and that their benefits are not in jeopardy through you.
Senator Austin.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Yes.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. The next section that I want to draw attention to is section 345 through 347, which is school and public library policies. I have a feeling I have some colleagues that are going to probably speak at this at great length after me. I just wanted to make a couple of comments for the record, which is that this is one of the most frustrating conversations that we've had as far as debate over public policy in the state of Connecticut that I can think of. And it appears that, you know, people across Connecticut, some have become agitated and upset, frustrated, that apparently there are certain types of books appearing in public schools and public school libraries. And some of these contain graphic content. And when I say graphic content, I genuinely mean it. I think this stuff probably is far more graphic than your typical pornographic magazine that you might be familiar with. And yet, whenever someone brings this to the attention of the majority, the response is they're trying to ban books. And I just want to set the record straight, which is I don't know anyone who's trying to ban books. I certainly am not trying to ban books. What people want to see is the offensive content not put before children, and that things that are for grown-ups or for people that prefer to look at that type of material are set aside, and only age-appropriate material ends up in front of children in a classroom or in a public school setting. That's the debate, and I'm frustrated beyond belief that we can't have a conversation that's truthful about this, where people are not attacked as book banners or being unrealistically critical of these materials. The bill that's before us is designed actually to stifle the rights and voices of parents who want to have a say in what material is put before their children in a public school setting. The idea that we would have a bill that denies them that right and actually empowers the bureaucracy to put them on the defense is shocking to me. Again, I know that some others will bring up this policy later, but this is another example of a section of this bill which was a standalone policy, maybe several of them, that would have been debated for many hours and to the benefit of the people of Connecticut so that all voices would have been heard and people would have been able to get on the record and discuss this in a manner that might have ended up with some fruitful public policy. But instead, what we're going to get is a few minutes of comments as part of this unbelievably large and far-reaching document. And that's a shame, Madam President. Section 351 is about obesity treatment. It looks to me like this will change the mandate that currently exists for, the Department of Social Services to provide these types of obesity drugs, and instead eliminate the mandate instead of create an allow instead of require language. And I'm very much in favor of that. I was the single opponent of that mandate when it passed several years ago, and I pointed out first and foremost that it's not the obligation of the rest of the people of Connecticut to be paying for these drugs, but also that it was going to end up costing a tremendous fortune. And I believe that people have figured that out since, and so I'll take that as a victory that's common sense sometimes does prevail. I notice in lines, or in sections 381 and 382, this is the corporation business tax surcharge. This is a tax put on businesses in the state of Connecticut. It seems to come with a sunset date each time it's up for a renewal as far as our state budget goes. And here it is, once again, being extended for another, I think, 3 years, according to this summary that I'm looking at. This right here is something that was intended to be temporary. This was intended to help us get over a hump. We're just going to tax these businesses a little bit more to help finance the state's budget concerns. But yet, every time that expiration comes, every time that sunset comes, here we are, extending it once again. Never believe any government when they tell you they're going to sunset a tax or they're going to put something in a lockbox or anything of that nature. Frankly, they just cannot be trusted. I was going to engage in some conversation on Section 411 regarding the volatility cap, but frankly, Senator Fazio covered that in some detail, and he's a lot smarter than I am, so I will leave it at that. I noticed in Section 421 there is something about e-cigarettes, and I just have a question about this. I don't know whether I can ask the good chairman about this or not, but I've heard a frustration from some of my constituents that the same policy that exists for selling cigarettes is now being extended to other things, including e-cigarettes. And that is that under Connecticut law, a customer is required to document their age every time they come in to make a purchase. The thing is that I think the law is written in a way that says that it does not matter whether the clerk knows this person and they see them every day for years, maybe decades, and yet they've got to continue to keep checking and verifying that person's age repeatedly. I don't know if that's something that we could address in a way that still provides the protection but eliminates that annoyance for both the parties who don't need to participate in it. I brought this up several times regarding the existing statute. No one wanted to listen. I see now that it's being extended over to e-cigs. I'm not suggesting that people shouldn't have to meet the requirement. I'm just suggesting that it's an unnecessary burden on some business owners. Section 432, I noticed that there is a a new fee of 5 cents per month that is going to be applied to telephone, local telephone service, might even include something called VoIP, which is Voice over Internet Protocol. This basically is a tax, and it's a hidden tax because unlike appearing as a tax as we know it, part of our income tax or sales tax or itemized in a certain way, this is just a new tax placed on your telephone bill, much like the public benefits charge is a hidden tax placed on your electric bill. And yes, it's for a good cause, which in my view makes it actually worse. We shouldn't be taking good causes and funding them through hidden taxes, in my view. If you think something is important enough to fund it, like in this particular case, it's the firefighters' cancer relief account, then just fund it. I remember years ago having a debate in this building about the potential of funding the fire schools in the state of Connecticut by adding a tax onto homeowners insurance policies. And thankfully, that didn't happen, and the state found the money and put it in the budget the proper way. Never enough, mind you, but at least it was done the right way. Since then, the state of Connecticut, in its infinite wisdom, has decided to put a hidden tax on homeowners insurance policies to pay for other things, and now we are finding a way to put a hidden tax on telephone service. I have news for my colleagues. The people of Connecticut don't want any more hidden taxes. They don't want any more hidden fees. They want to have a state government that is responsible to them. That's why they elected us. And to me, it's just a frustration to see yet another nickel, literally, and dime of the people of Connecticut, and for a good cause. If this is so important, and it is, let's fund it properly. I also noticed that there's changes in 436 to 439 to the community investment account. We had this debate in the committee, and again, this was a long debate. There was a lot of different opinions about what should happen here. I think everybody agrees the community investment account's a good thing. We like it. But again, the way this is funded is by charging people at the municipal level for copies of documents and so forth. And this schedule increases those fees on those particular documents. I don't know if they're significant charges at all. But again, this is just another way that the state of Connecticut continues to create more obligations, and instead of picking up the tab, it finds a way to shift the responsibility to somebody else. You know, let's put 5 cents on a telephone bill. Let's put $12 on a homeowner's insurance policy. Let's increase people's electric bill 27.7%. And here it is, let's charge people in town more to get a photocopy of their deed. I don't think that's the right way to go about it. And what's the money spent for? The next thing that I highlighted and I put a little tab on is debt-free community college, which is on line T532 of the budget document. And it's $34,150,000 each year. I know when I talk to my constituents and I ask them whether or not they think this is a good idea, they're frustrated. Certainly, they don't want to see people overpaying to go to college. They're sympathetic to people and how expensive going to school is. But what we're doing here is we're asking people to pay for other people to go to school. And in some cases, you're asking for people who actually are paying to go to school themselves to also pay for other people to not to pay to go to school. I don't think the majority of our constituents agree with that. That's why I'm mentioning it. I noticed, by the way, going through this document, that there are a great many line items that are, I'll say, hard to identify or understand exactly what's happening. So I'm going to ask about a few of those. I noticed that there are some items that are marked twice as earmarks in this budget, and I'm just curious why that would be. I'll give you a couple of examples. Through you, Madam President, I noticed in the City of Bridgeport, on line T1270 and on line T1301, we have the Bridgeport Carib youth leaders listed, and it's listed once for 30,000 and once for 160,000. And I'm just curious if this is the same organization and why it's listed 2 separate times. Through you, Madam President.
Senator Austin.
Thank you very much. T1270 and T12 1301. Okay. There are organizations, this is probably the same organization, but it was entered by 2 different people in the youth violence and youth services, youth service prevention account. Through you.
Thank you. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I would encourage anyone that has access to the internet who cares about what's going on in their state to look up this budget document. The Connecticut General Assembly website is not that simple to use, but you can put in a bill number and you can look at documents and you could follow along. I'm on page 45 of 693, and I'm just looking at the list of places that are receiving taxpayer grants. And I just think it's interesting that from the good chairman's comments, 2 separate people might have requested money for this group, but who's talking to who to have this show up on the same section, section 33? It's not like this is coming from 2 different pots of money or anything. The same entity shows up twice. And apparently the one person that asked had a lot more steam than the other one, because one line item is 160,000 and the other one is 30,000. So is the actual intent to give this organization 190,000? How was this number determined? Through you, Madam President.
Senator Austin.
Thank you very much, Madam President. It was determined by the people who applied for it, not by the organization itself. Through you, Madam President.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. The people that applied for it, so I'm assuming we mean lawmakers? And who approves that document to be included as part of our state budget? Through you.
Senator Austin.
Thank you very much. Both the youth services prevention and the youth violence prevention are determined by minority representation to ensure that different groups were being recognized. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I appreciate that. And I think it's great that we have this grant program, and I am aware of the Youth Services Prevention Grant Program, and I believe even in the town of Wolcott, I believe we have an organization that received some of this money one time. But can I just ask through you, Madam President, how are we ensuring that these are legitimate organizations? And I'm not calling into question the one I mentioned or any others. I'm just curious about the process. How do we know? Because there are many, many of these organizations. I find that sometimes, as I mentioned, they're listed twice. Sometimes they're actually misspelled. How do we know whether these are legitimate organizations that are receiving these funds that are hard-earned taxpayers from all of our constituents? Through you.
Senator Austin.
Thank you very much, Madam President. All of them have to fill out documents that are inputted. They all have to attend a training session on how the dollars can be spent. I would say that if they are misspelled, it's someone who was typing them in, not the fault of the organization itself, because the organization itself doesn't do so. And these organizations are insured to be covered by certain tax types, like a 501c3, nonprofit, and they have to say how they're spending the dollars. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I appreciate that answer. I guess another question on this is just how are these amounts determined? I mean, I noticed that some of them, the Middletown Youth Services Bureau is on here for $8,000. The one I just mentioned between the 2 line items is $190,000. That's quite the disparate amount. And there are a lot of these. I don't know the total number, but it goes on for several pages of organizations. And I noticed that some of them, I guess the highest amounts I see are in the 300,000 range. And the lowest amounts look like maybe 5,000. Oh, here's one for 4,000. So I'm just curious, what's the distinction that determines how much they actually get through you?
Senator Austin.
Thank you very much, Madam President. The organization amounts are determined by the minority representative that applies for the dollar amount. Through you, Madam President.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Well, I appreciate that information, although it doesn't really help me understand who's overseeing this and deciding whether those are legitimate amounts and that they're actually going to legitimate organizations. These are the hard-earned dollars of taxpayers in the state of Connecticut. And I will tell you that I took some time, along with some of the folks on our staff over here, to go through this list of earmarks just to kind of look up some of these organizations and find out what we could about them. And I have to tell you that there's a great many of them where you can't even find these organizations exist. They don't have a website. They don't have an Instagram. They don't have a phone number. And I just am wondering, on behalf of the people I represent, before this money goes out the door, in the form of $4,000 to $5,000 each or $300,000 each, that we're cutting checks to various organizations, that we know that it's legitimate. Can I just ask, there's a few of these. There's one here that's T1260. This is the Building Leaders Across Communities. I'm just curious to know what this organization does, through you.
Senator Austin.
Thank you very much, Madam President. So, Madam President, if I could, with your indulgence, answer the comment that my good colleague made relative to who oversees these accounts. These accounts are overseen by the Judicial Department. They ensure that everybody goes through the correct correct training, that they're actually spending the money on what they should be spending the money on, and they then make sure that they're checking on these particular groups to make sure that the funding is actually doing what it's intended to do. Through you, Madam President, and relative to the question at hand on 1260, Building Leaders Across Communities Incorporated, I'm really not certain, as I am not intimately involved with each one of these line items. They're determined through minority representation and through the Judicial Department, so there's a check and balance there, and the money does not go out if the organization does not fill out the appropriate paperwork and provide the appropriate tax documentation. Through you, Madam President.
Senator Sampson.
And thank you very much, Madam President. Just so I understand, are these grants applied for by these organizations? Are there criteria that they have to follow? And you mentioned the Judiciary Department actually is the one that facilitates this. Is there some sort of oversight? Do they have a report? Do they ever follow up to find out how the money was used? We're talking about a substantial amount of money in many of these cases, and I would like to be able to assure my constituents that their money is not being wasted or thrown away via these earmarks, and that this money is actually going to youth services prevention. I'm looking at this, and I see, the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Waterbury, which I'm familiar with, and they do tremendous work. And I look at the number 80,000, and I think, geez, that's a low number for the amount of effort and the number of lives that they touch and the number of kids that are involved in their programs. And I really wonder, whether or not they're getting enough. And then I look at these other organizations, especially with some of the names of them that are, I don't want to say they're humorous, they're just unusual. You're not talking about the Police Athletic League or the Boys and Girls Club. You got Hip Hop 1001 is on here, and maybe they do great work. I don't know. But that's the question. I don't know. And who knows is really the question. And do we ever find out? Do we ever get a report, an analysis? Is there ever an investigation into whether or not this money is used for youth services prevention purposes, to make sure that when we're sending these checks out, that it's actually going to the people that are using it properly? Through you.
Thank you very much, Madam President. The short answer is yes.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I didn't specify I wanted the short answer, but I appreciate it nonetheless. I would ask the good chairman if it's possible to share with me, maybe offline, on where I can go look to find out more information, to find out what type of application was made, to see if there's any data that is recorded about how this money was used. I really do think that there is the potential here, if we're simply allowing anyone that declares themselves a nonprofit and they're friendly with whatever lawmaker has the power to get a line item in this document, that they can get a check for a substantial amount of money. I'm not casting any aspersions. I'm just saying I would really hate to think that anything like that could possibly happen. I mean, you know, I had a member of the staff go through this list, and you would be amazed the number of organizations that have no information. You can search them on any search engine or any public records list, and you can't find them. They don't have any public-facing entity whatsoever, and they're being given checks, you know, as much as, you know, $60 or $1,000 or more. Here's, you know, Glastonbury, the Milan Cultural Association, possibly a very good, respectable organization. Again, I'm casting no aspersions. I know nothing except for what I have. But it says the website is down. They do have a social media account where they tend to highlight, it looks like, some Democratic lawmakers, which is a good thing. Is there anything in here, you know, based on that, through you, Madam President, that would prohibit these organizations from engaging in political activities, through you?
Senator Austin.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Relative to whether or not someone can engage in political activities, organizations that receive dollars from the state are not allowed to participate in political activities. That does not mean an individual that is not a, my understanding is an individual that is not a leader or a principal of that organization, they're the ones that cannot participate in political activities. But if someone was working for them, much akin as you and I have jobs, we can participate in political activities. And they are, if someone does not pan out as being an organization that is doing the work relative to youth services or youth violence prevention, my understanding is that the Judicial Department pays attention to that and makes sure that that's not happening, and has not released funds in certain cases. I can get you both a copy of the application that they make after this is approved to receive those funds, and the reports that they are required to do, so that you can, you know, that you can assure your residents that these funds are being appropriately distributed and appropriately covered based on whether or not they're an organization that's a good organization. So I think that I've answered all your questions relative to this particular issue. Not all your questions, but relative to that. But I'm happy to get you involved in understanding what happens should somebody be on this list and they have to apply for what they have to apply for, what they have to provide for information, and what they have to do with the dollars. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you. Senator Sampson.
Madam President, thank you very much. Respectfully to the chairman, we haven't even begun to answer the questions that I have about these earmarks that are contained in this budget. That doesn't mean I'm going to ask all those questions here tonight, but I can tell you that looking at this list and just the short amount of research that was done over the past less than 24 hours by members of the staff has raised tremendous concern for me that these earmarks are not all what they seem to be. And I'm very concerned that these organizations, while the vast majority of them are very likely legitimate, I suspect that there are not, there are going to be problems if there was a investigation, which I would encourage. Is there anything through you, Madam President, that would prohibit a sitting lawmaker from being on the board of directors of any of these organizations receiving money? That seems to me like it might be an ethics violation through you.
Senator Austin.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Anybody that has an ethical question should be checking with ethics to make sure that they are following all the rules. I would have to go back and look at each organization to see if a lawmaker is a principal of that organization and is making recommendations that would be either a fiscal or political gain for them. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Frankly, this is a somewhat uncomfortable situation because I don't really want to ask a lot of difficult questions of my colleague on the floor, especially when I know she's not the ultimate decider of each one of these line items that is contained as earmarks. But frankly, anyone that's going to support this document and they're going to push the green button to say yes to this document should know what they're voting on. I know what I'm voting on. I know the things that I call into question, that I disagree with, that I'm going to vote no as a result. And I also know the things that I don't know the answer to, and that's another good reason to vote no, in my view. But if you're going to push the green button and you're going to vote for this budget document, which I use the term extremely loosely because it is a mere fraction of the document before us is the actual state budget. It's a lot of this associated policies and bills that didn't make it over the finish line. But this particular laundry list of earmarks is concerning because I would expect before the state of Connecticut starts handing out checks as little as $4,000 or as much as $300,000 to these organizations, that they would have some idea who they are. I don't know any more about this process than what I've heard tonight. I don't know who at the Judicial Department is making these decisions. I don't know if it's a committee of people, a single individual, whether they just have the carte blanche authority to say this one's okay and this one's not. Do they ever say no? I don't know the answers to any of these questions. And I'm tempted to put the chairman on the spot, but I'm not going to do that because I don't think she knows the answers to those questions either. But I will tell you that somebody in the majority, the ones that put this document together and said, this is the finished product, this is what we're going to put on the table, they are responsible for what's in here. And in my view, if it's not all up to snuff, they're as culpable as the people that put these items in here that should not have been. And voting yes on a document where there are a mountain of questions as to whether or not we are violating the spirit, if not the letter of our rules when it comes to what belongs in a certain a budget document and whether or not these extraneous policy issues should be included for the mere purpose of evading the minority's ability to debate and potentially block them. I don't know. I appreciate my colleagues on the other side of the aisle and I have respect for them. But one of the things that causes me to have respect is that we play by the rules, that we respect one another to understand that, you know, the majority's got the votes, they're going to win the day largely. But they also recognize that the minority has a right to speak, the right to offer amendments, the right to challenge the views and ideas of the majority. This right here, to me, turns that all on its head. This budget document says, we do not care what you think to the people that serve in the minority. And frankly, as one of those people, I'm disgusted by it. They are not just telling me that I don't have a voice on these items. They are also telling the people that I represent back home and my fellow Republican minority members, their constituents back home, that their voice doesn't matter as much because the majority will simply just go right around our process as we normally follow it and stuff these items in the budget to get them over the finish line at the end when they may have been outmaneuvered over the past several weeks in the way we debate policy. It's a tremendous frustration, Madam President, and I could go on indefinitely. I have so many notes in this bill. There is a section in here that includes the, it's 162. It is a section about providing a requirement in the state that any off-site fabrication of building materials has to be done under our prevailing wage statutes. This is going to have such an immense and incredible impact on business and industry in this state that it is unfathomable. Unfathomable. I can't do it. Whatever, I tried. You get the idea. It's going to have a big, big impact. And I don't know that anyone in this chamber has the real understanding of that because we haven't debated it here. This is a labor bill. It's been on the calendar for weeks. At any point over the last several weeks, the chairman of the Labor Committee could have been authorized to bring that bill right out here, and we would have had a great conversation about it, and everyone here would understand exactly what that entails. And I can tell you what it's going to entail is costs. Costs on taxpayers, because municipalities will be faced with these new requirements. Municipalities are already faced with ridiculous requirements because of our prevailing wage laws. To extend that to off-site fabrication is going to cause several things to happen. It's going to drive up their costs immediately. It is going to cause various industries to relocate out of our state. There are anecdotal examples I can give you where people have told me, I have a facility in Rhode Island also. I'm just going to start employing the people over there at that facility to do my off-site fabrication. I'm going to close my shop in Connecticut. That's what will happen as a result of a policy like this. I'm trying to boil down what I would have taken several hours to discuss in detail so people truly understand the impact of this policy into just a few seconds. And I'm offended by the fact that I have to do that because I don't have any other choice. I could keep us here, but even me, who's someone capable of spending a lot of time speaking on the floor, doesn't have the ability to spend all of the time that is necessary to go through everything that is in this document that I would need to feel comfortable that we had the proper debate. Nor am I able to ask the proper people the proper questions because of this change in our process. One final thing, which I'll just make a note of, and that is that recently we had a negotiation on a bill regarding the State Elections Enforcement Commission, a bill that passed both chambers unanimously, I'm pretty sure. Actually, no, I'm sorry, it did not. It did not pass the Senate unanimously. I don't know about the House either. But overwhelmingly, because this was a bill negotiated in good faith by all four caucuses. And it has to do with a number of changes to how we are going to manage the state's Election Enforcement Commission. The thing about that I'm bringing up right now is just the fact that in this building, one of the first things people tell you when you're elected is that your word is the most important thing that you have as a lawmaker. And if you make a promise to somebody that you're going to do something, or you're going to change this language, or you're going to call this amendment, or you're not going to call this amendment, or you're going to do this or that, you better do it. Because if you break your word, people are not going to respect you. And the next time that you need something, or you're trying to get something done for your constituents back home, it's not going to happen. My frustration is that we made a deal. We passed that bill together after, I think, several years of discussion and debate about what it would contain. And the day that it happened, we were pleased, I think the majority of us, that it got over the finish line. So I'm very surprised to see that there is a section in the budget document, section 262, which is designed to undermine and change part of that agreement. In my view, that's unacceptable. That is going back on your word, and that is breaking the agreement that all of us had. That is a frustration, much more than the minor change merits. But I keep my word, and I keep my promises, Madam President. And I promised my constituents a long time ago that I was not going to vote for any policy that harms them or makes this state less attractive for them to stay, to work, to live, to run a business, to retire. And this budget, so-called budget, is not in their best interest, because it's going to make all of those things much more difficult going forward. And for those reasons, Madam President, I'm going to vote no today. Thank you.
Thank